Nietzsche scholar Brian Leiter. This poignant story about Nietzsche, who was moved to intervene over the flogging of a horse, affected Christine Dagler.
I find this anecdote of Nietzsche walking in the streets and seeing this horse being beaten by his driver to be very sad. It makes me sad of thinking about this image of Nietzsche witnessing the beating and being overwhelmed by compassion or empathy for this suffering animal. What is he witnessing? He is witnessing unwarranted cruelty. Well, is cruelty ever warranted, right? And this is something he cannot accept. Did it project him into madness all of a sudden? I don't know. These things are hard to assess. This is the 19th century. Diagnosis might not be as easy back then as it is nowadays. I don't know how easy it is nowadays. But what I think it tells us is that Nietzsche was not this cold-hearted person that maybe some people have wanted to give us from bits and pieces of his writings. I don't read him as an advocate of sheer force. He does talk about the strong man, the higher man, and the lower man or the weaker man, the nobles and the slaves. But he says very importantly that it would be wrong on the part of a strong individual to exercise their strength over the weak, that it would be cruel and that it would be unacceptable. People often forget that, but I think it's very important. He does talk about a form of compassion that the overman would have towards the weak. What is really important for him is not necessarily to create values from scratch, but to re-evaluate values. There's this whole concept of the re-evaluation of values in Nietzsche. And that means what? It means revisiting what it is that we value, what virtues we consider to be good, and to actually really put them to the test of our own thinking and critique. So if we're going to take the virtue of compassion, for example, we receive it from Christianity. If one is a Christian, one receives it from one's own religious teachings. But there is a way in which the individual can take this virtue of compassion, look at it, analyze it, criticize it, and at the end of that process, make it one's own value. If one considers compassion to be a good thing, if exercised in a certain way, which does not diminish one's own strength, for example, then compassion might very well be a virtue that one adopts for oneself. But the difference is between receiving something, taking it for granted because one has been taught to think it is good, and adopting it for oneself.
Christine Dagler on Nietzsche's complicated feelings about strength, virtue, and compassion. This is Ideas on CBC Radio 1. Next, I return to Brian Leiter as we continue our conversation by talking about Nietzsche's version of, well, Groundhog Day. I'll maybe afflict myself by asking this next question. I confronted Nietzsche as an undergraduate and sort of fell instantly in love, and thought I had begun to unpack some of these concepts in a less than unsophisticated fashion. Concepts like Übermensch, concepts like relativity of values. One that